So these are my thoughts on PrimeaGen's comments on last week's episode of Lemonade Stand. I think he delivered. So the question that was asked was basically for those people that are putting in a lot of effort and graduating from CS careers, right? CS degrees right now, and they're putting in a lot of effort, but they're still unable to find a job. What do you have to say for these people? And his response, boiling it down, essentially was that he talks about how in his time, he had a lot more experience than the people right now and he put in a lot more time and effort, and then he had to go through a lot of things to eventually get to where he was in terms of his experience and finally getting a job there. He talked about the different things of like the people looking down on him because everyone around him worked from like Berkeley or Stanford, or like they were top of class like Ivy grads or whatever, and he's coming from the South and he had like prejudice, or things like how he had to struggle living above a meth addict, and then how those things he had to struggle for a number of years before he finally got like good jobs. And to all of that, I would definitely agree that there is some level of like pain and hardship that a lot of people have to go through in order to achieve a certain goal. The problem I think that he is missing right now is the fact that there is a lot of other stuff and a lot of other factors at play that aren't necessarily at the fault of someone's effort. So you can have like a really, really, really big amount of effort, and maybe you do get a job like in this current system and economy. But if you had like that same amount of effort like 15 years ago, sure, you also can equally like get a really, really, really good job because you're putting in like, you know, a lot of time and effort. The problem is for those people that are more like lower down on the curve, that are putting in a lot of effort, but maybe not like the absolute top 0.1% of people. Like say like you're in even like the top 10%, right? And you're putting in like hours a day leak coding, you're putting in like a lot of time grinding out side projects. These people are also still unable to get a job. Whereas people at this level of effort in the top 10% 15 years ago, they may have been able to more easily get a job because there was just a lot more opportunities that existed. I think one way I can compare this is how I think about job applications in general. I don't say this to like be like condescending, but I think it's just how I think about like the effort versus reward ratios, and how this ratio, this curve can also shift over time. So what I mean is, if you imagine like a curve, if this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis, right? So this is the amount of effort you put in, or no, sorry. This is the amount of effort you put in on the y-axis. So this is more and more and more effort. And this is how much result you get. So this is like how much it takes for you to like achieve some kind of result. Essentially, it's like for what is the absolute bare minimum of effort in order to put in to get a job. Okay, you should submit your resume. Obviously, get a resume. Okay, submit the resume. That's like step one because it takes like 5 seconds. But what about the next step? Okay, maybe you have like a catered resume. Maybe the job is like for a specific role, and you have like a general resume, but you want to cater some points on your resume. Okay, that's step 2. That takes like 5 minutes. What about like writing a cover letter? Like you just use AI, generate like a big blob and be like, oh, okay, I'm blah, 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 here's my experience, interest in your company. Okay, that's maybe like 15 minutes of effort, but you get a slightly higher chance. And then there's like, maybe you make a very personalized cover letter highlighting all of the qualifications, all of your experiences, and then okay, good cover letter. And then maybe a level above that is like, okay, now you're going on LinkedIn, finding people's emails, using Rocket Reach, finding people's like actual work emails, harassing the engineers, harassing the recruiters until somebody at the company responds to you and gives you like that first step to at least look at your resume. Okay, that's probably going to take like hours of effort, but your chances of getting a job are like slightly higher. Now, for the very, very, as I mentioned earlier, the 0.1% of people that are putting in a crap ton of effort, I know people that like make entire websites for one specific job position. Like they, there's one friend I have who really, really wanted to work at Spotify. Spotify always did this thing called Spotify Wrapped. And this was also, I would admittedly like 5-6 years ago, but I'm just giving an example of like the 0.1%. This person put in the effort to make a very well created website without AI. This is pre-AI, where he basically made a Spotify Wrapped, but about himself, and then talked about all of his experiences, how it rates the role. It's like a full like interactive experience you can have, but just about his experiences and why he would be a good fit for Spotify. So he was blasting this on social media. It caught a bit of traction. Finally, like some recruiter saw it and was like, okay, here, we'll do an interview. That wasn't even giving it a job. It was just a first step. But what I mean is with that amount of like 1 week's worth of effort, finally he's like putting like he's here on like the effort, and then finally he's perhaps like getting a job where it's like if you were to put in that amount of effort today, it's also possible maybe something blows up and you get something. But the problem is like most people don't really like, that's not like most people, you know, like for those 0.1%, okay, good for you, you make like a really fancy website, it gets you something rewarding, I'm happy for you. But for the majority of people who aren't like, I'm gonna make a spend 1 full week, drop everything, make a website that's really fancy and like catered towards this one specific posting, like that's just unrealistic. And it's like if the average amount of effort 15 years ago was, I'm gonna get a good resume, maybe like do like an unpaid internship or something, and then study 4 years, more than a boot camp, and then like I come out and then maybe like, oh, I can finally get an offer after working hard and like making 4 side projects and whatever. Take that exact same package, copy and paste it today, and that is not enough at the curve. Like if the curve before to get a job was here, you put in this amount of effort, you can hit a job, they have just shifted the curve down. So like the amount of effort is not equitable to that level of reward before. And then I think a comment pointed that out, but this is also a really good highlight of survivorship bias, because if PrimeageM was someone who 15 years ago did this amount of effort, finally got something, went through a ton of hardship, okay, that makes sense. But he is someone that was lucky enough to have those things lined up and eventually get it. Yes, there are a lot more, even more privileged and lucky people who have, you know, the money to spend on like a really good education and like try really hard for really good grades. That is true. But what I also mean is there's the entire rest of the curve. You're not looking at this like 0.1% of people. You're looking at the vast majority of people who maybe at the cutoff before it was like, oh, during like the crazy zero interest rate bubble, like, okay, a lot more people than maybe than should have got jobs, because like, you know, Meta was throwing out offers left and right. And then it's like, if you just have a CS degree, like they were dropping like leak code easies for you, and then you can just get a job. Versus now you have to do like leak code hards, sometimes like multiple leak code hards. And then if you even make one mistake, you're like cut from the process. The reason isn't because like the people nowadays aren't putting in more effort. It's just the curve has shifted. And I would even say like on the company's behalf, it's also related to the economy. If you're a company now, let's say, right? And then you want to hire, like before you had a shit ton of money, you can blow it on like 1,000 new employees per year. And it's like, everything's fine because you have that money. But now it's like, oh, okay, we can only accommodate 10 new employees. It's like, well, you can't just say like, oh, we're just gonna randomly pick 10. You're still gonna put in the effort to like, you know, trim out the people. But the problem is if you only have 10 spots to begin with, it's like literally only like a 0.1% of people that apply can get a job, whereas like before, 10% of the people that apply could get into a job. And maybe, yes, the number of people applying is also bigger, but I mean proportional to the amount of effort that is being put in, the curve has shifted. If you have only 10 spots for your company, I'm not using Meta as an example, I'm just saying like some other company now. If you only have 10, like if you could only have the money to hire 10 people, you are going to still want the best of the best, right? You want the top best people that are suited for the role. So you're naturally gonna now, with like, you know, 1,000 people, like 10,000 people applying, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, well now I'm gonna do like leak code hards, because like how else are you gonna filter out 10,000 people? You're gonna like push that curve so you can filter out those like tiny like amount of people that can do like multiple leak code hards, and then sure, now I can interview them and maybe get them a job. But for everyone else, like previously who didn't have to do that, that is, I think, the mismatch here. Like he's not understanding that like there's the disproportionate amount of people that nowadays have equal amounts of effort as before but aren't getting jobs, and the system itself has changed because like, you know, there's literally less jobs to offer. Like things are more scarce. It's not just a matter of like people not putting in the same amount of effort that he put in before. Yes, there is, again, there was 0.1% of people who will do that, who will achieve great things. And those are the success stories that you hear. Like maybe those are the people that like, oh my God, I finally discovered AI. I can do all these crazy cool things. I'm going to talk to Doug. I'm going to talk to Primeagen and talk about my success. Obviously, because you want to share it. But for the everyone else that isn't doing that, like I feel like it should speak to some level of like maybe it's them being out of touch with their audience, but it's like it's not the same level of comparison. For everyone else out here who is putting in a lot of effort and not seeing that reward, they're not in that 0.1%. Even if you're putting in the top 10% of effort, you're still not seeing a reward. That's not your fault for not putting in enough effort. That's the fault of the system not having enough jobs, the economy's doing not so great. And I think a large reason of why they still believe this thing is because of the people they surround themselves with. If you surround yourself with people that are all employed and all the people that are sharing their success stories, all you're going to hear is like, oh, the economy's great, AI is great. Yes, for that specific set of people. But if you connect with like the majority, everyone else, you will hear a more different story, like a much more different story. And I think that's like the highlight that I just wanted to share. I don't mean to blame them to say like, oh, they're not doing a good job of they're like actively harming people. Actually, maybe they are, because they're like, you know, spreading this false optimism that like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. Everything might be okay for those 0.1% of people, but they were gonna be okay anyways, you know? Like, I think maybe it's just like they should, I don't know what the solution is. Maybe they just need to like talk to more of their like, read more of their comments, talk to more people like within their audience, or like do some customer research, you know, talk to your audience and like get a better gauge of like what most people are saying, rather than just those survivorship, like one-off, like people doing well and then hearing those stories. Because I feel like it's much harder to share like, oh, I'm putting in like 10 hours a day trying to find a job and I can't find a job. Like they don't want to hear that. Like who wants to be like, they're not going to engage with that as much as someone who's like, oh, I put in 5 hours, I got a job, economy's doing great. Like that's a great success. Oh, and thank you for like, you know, you're inspiring me to like do great things. Like it's not a level comparison, I think. Anyways, no hate. I think they're I would say, at least from the people on Lemonade Stand, they're still trying their best to understand the situation. I'm sure they'll read the comments at some point and get to a better understanding of this, but that's just my 2 cents. I need to ramble on this, and thank you for listening. You're doing great. Don't care about what other people are saying. It's not your fault, but at the same time, don't let that discourage you from still trying and investing in yourself and preparing for your own future, because that's important. Anyways, yes. Thank you for listening.